And a lot of the times when someone is bullying you or targeting you, it's because you have something, a light inside of you that they don't have and can never achieve, and they're taking it out on you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what pushed you to start your passion.
My name is Olivia Rush. I'm 22 years old. I'm from Allentown, Pennsylvania. I'm a professional dancer and model, and I also run my own nonprofit called Dance to Make a Change. I started dancing when I was 3 years old. My oldest sister and oldest brother were professional Russian-trained ballet dancers. I saw my brother perform in the Nutcracker on stage, and I just fell in love. That was it. I started dancing. I had a very technical background upbringing, but I'm trained in everything. And around 10, 11 was when I started exploring the world of hip hop, fell in love with that, continued pursuing it. I started my professional journey when I was 15. I came out to LA for the first time, and I got scouted and signed. And the rest of it just kind of snowballed from there.
Wow, that's all really cool. Tell us a little bit about your organization and how were you able to start that?
Yeah, I would love to. So my organization actually initially started as Sunshine Loves You, which is my whole thing. My nickname is Sunshine. And I was the victim of bullying when I was younger, pretty severely. After I had started my journey dancing again, and I had gotten pushed into modeling with this anti-bullying clothing brand called Izzy B. And it ended up being one of the best experiences of my life. And they were just the kindest, sweetest people, and they really encouraged me to share my story. I was very reserved at this point in my life, and I didn't want to be a model. I was very against this whole thing. But I'm so glad that I did it, and they ended up becoming some of my best friends, and they really encouraged me to share my story. And so one day I just filmed a video on YouTube, just talking, kind of explaining my life. I wasn't really expecting anything to come of it. But I'd woken up the next day with a few hundred views, which was a lot for me at the time. And I had a bunch of DMs from kids and people of all ages, but mostly kids, reaching out and telling me how my story inspired them. And then they were asking me for advice. And I started mentoring people through Instagram. And I remember going to my mom and just saying, this is it. This is why it happened. This had to happen so I can help other people. Every experience I've gone through has put me in a position to help others, and that to me makes it all worth it. So after I realized that helping people is something that is really a part of my purpose and fulfilling to me, is after I did Sunshine Loves You for a few months, I was like, okay, guys, I'm a professional dancer. We got to incorporate that in here somewhere. So I held my first event, called it Dance to Make a Change, in New York City. It was a 2-hour event. First hour is a peer chat where I tell them about my story and what I went through, and then they're allowed to share their stories and ask questions and advice. And it's really just a beautiful thing to create that safe space and community. And then we just, do a fun little dance class after. We make sure everyone gets a video, they feel good about themselves. And it's really just about creating a supportive community and watching the connections form outside of the space that I created. It's just so fulfilling to me. But yeah, I did my first event when I was 17 in New York City, and I was not expecting anything. I had over 30 people show up, and to me, that was just confirmation, this is something I'm meant to do.
I think it's really cool how you were able to tie, your passion to something where you could help others. You mentioned mentoring and giving a bit of advice to kids. If you could give some advice to people who may be going through a hard time, and how would they show resilience through that hard time, what would that advice be?
There's so many things that I want to say, but Some of the most important ones that I wish I heard at that time is always use your voice. You are so much more powerful than you think you are. Even if you feel alone and you feel like nobody cares, I promise you somebody and so many people care. And even if it's not someone that you can think of in your immediate mind right now, I care, and I don't even know you. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are people who are going to be there that are going to advocate for you and stand up for you. And one of my biggest regrets is not getting help sooner. And also just understanding that a lot of the interactions you have with people on a day-to-day basis are projections of how they feel about themselves. And a lot of the times when someone is bullying you or targeting you, it's because you have something, a light inside of you that they don't have and can never achieve, and they're taking it out on you because they want what you have. And I think the most important part of it is to not retaliate, not engage. Silence is so powerful because they feed off of a reaction. One of the biggest things for me going throughout all of these experiences in my life, because unfortunately, it was not just an isolated incident. This is something, even if it's not with those specific people, something I still continue to face to this day, which is very sad to say and a hard truth to swallow. But something that my mom always engraved in me growing up was to never let them make me become jaded, to never let them make my heart cold. And I didn't understand that for a long time because, you know, like, I wanted to be angry. These people were hurting me for no reason, and I didn't do anything to them to make them treat me this way. And I didn't do it back. But it's not easy to stay soft, but I promise you it is so worth it in the long run.
So you mentioned a little bit about having a hard time with bullying. How did you stay so positive during that time instead of drowning or, like your mom said, giving advice, not being angry or staying soft?
I'm not going to lie. I am someone who's very honest and real about my experiences, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's all been sunshine and rainbows because it most definitely has not been. And it wasn't easy for a long time. And I'm not going to say that I wasn't angry and depressed and going through it for a long time. But I think deep down, I always had this like inner sense of knowing. It's almost like this little ball of peace. And I don't know how to describe it because even when everything in my world is collapsing, it was like this one little thing that was saying like, it's going to be okay. Like, this is for a reason. Just trust me. And I respect everybody's religious beliefs. I do personally believe in God and also, you know, spirituality and like the universe. And I just, it's all the same thing. I believe we all believe in the same thing, and just we have different ways of, you know, we can cut this, but I'm just trying to get where I'm trying to go, and my brain is just going. But I kind of always knew that I had a higher purpose. Whether I understood that fully or grasped it or not, I just knew that I was always different. And so it's important to feel your feelings. It's important to go through these stages of grief. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to cry and yell and do whatever you need to do to feel your feelings. Now, with that being said, don't take those feelings out on the wrong person or someone else, but still feel your feelings and process them. But after you're done doing that, you keep going. You can't let these feelings weigh you down. You can't let these people hold you back, because ultimately that's what they want. They want to stop you from becoming what they know you can be because they see it even if you can't. And
I think what you said about like that little bowl of peace that you've had your whole life, I think that's such an important skill to have. And, you know, it's just impressive. Like you said, you're allowed to grieve, you're allowed to process your emotions, but there's a healthy and an unhealthy way to do so. Back to the thing about bullying. Do you have any advice on how to identify a bully or if there are any warning signs?
I think bullying has such a stereotyped reality from, like TV and movies and all this stuff, and you expect it to be this like outright screaming at you, hitting you, pulling your hair, but there is such a wide variety to bullying, especially emotional and verbal bullying, and that is just as impactful, if not even more long-term damage, because those things are like engraved into your brain, you know what I'm saying? And I think, of course, like I said before, always use your voice, whether you are the victim or you're a witness. If you're friends with the bully, call them out. Stand up for what you know is right. And as far as identifying it, it's not always necessarily what you say. Sometimes it's how you say it. And a lot of people get away with mistreating others or being undermining them, or backhanded compliments type of thing, And if you're in those scenarios and you notice someone is going out of their way to make someone uncomfortable or trying to exclude them or make them seem like they're a problem or something else, call it out. And listen, I know it might be a little controversial, but I am the person that will call anybody and everybody out. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a choreographer. I don't care if you're my uncle. I don't care if you're my best friend. If you are doing something wrong that is harming others, I will not keep my mouth shut. And I think that is a very important skill that I've acquired, because growing up, did I advocate for myself? No, I didn't. Should I have? Yes. But I always was an advocate for others. And I think that is such an important trait to have.
The truth, sometimes it hurts, but it's very important that it gets out there eventually. So I think that's very nice as well. For my last question, if somebody is being bullied, do you have any advice for how they should stand up or how they should ask for help from an adult or someone?
Don't do it in a confrontational way, because they're already so emotionally charged to even be coming at you this way. There's something unhealed and broken inside of them. So they're not going to meet you from a place of rationalization. And trust me, I've tried to rationalize and level with these people. And sometimes you literally just sit there and you're like, okay, right. Like, that's how it works. And you just got to accept it and move on. But what I have done, truly, is pray for them, because I hope that they can heal whatever is so broken inside of them that they needed to take it out on an innocent little girl or little boy or whoever. Honestly, there's been times where someone was treating me badly and I was just like, are you okay? Like, how are you feeling? And they just look at you like shocked and stunned because they're not expecting that. And I'm like, no, like, are you okay? Because clearly something is bothering you that you can't speak about. And obviously this is not going to work for every scenario, but it's really just, I know I keep saying it, but using your voice, your words, your energy, the way that you carry yourself, it is so powerful, and you have the power to change the narrative and the energy in the room. And I was always this big outgoing personality, but I allowed these people to shrink me so much that I'd be in these environments and I'd just absorb all of the negative energy and all of these things coming at me. And it wasn't until I realized that I was powerful enough to change the energy in the room. And if you don't give them power, they have no power. Asking for help is a scary thing in theory to think about, but it's honestly so much easier than you even think. And you're going to feel such a relief and a weight off of your chest just being able to speak about it and know that someone cares and is going to be there for you. I think the most important thing is to make sure, as much as we love our friends, they don't always have the answers and they don't always know what to do. And sometimes that itself can turn into a whisper down the alley and make it into a bigger situation than it needs to be. And I know that from my own personal experience. And so when you seek help, it's important to find a trusted adult. And it doesn't have to be your parents. It doesn't have to be a family member. It could be a teacher. It could be your guidance counselor. Whoever you feel safe with, and you know that not only can you trust them, but they're also going to help take the correct course of action to get you the help you need. I think that's the most important thing, is just don't be afraid and know that there are so many people who love you and care about you.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you. My name's Charlotte. I'm a junior. I'm so excited to be talking to you today. So I just wanted to start with asking, if you feel comfortable sharing, what could you tell us about your experience with bullying and your recovery process and your healing process?
When I was 11 years old, I, begged my mom to put me in hip-hop classes, and there wasn't really a lot of options for that in my area. We went to the studio that we had known. They had taught my other siblings. We thought it was a safe, trusted environment that we were going into. And, but once I started doing hip hop, I fell in love. I did the summer program. And it's really important for me to add in here that when I had started at this studio, I had just lost both my grandparents back to back. My sister was going through chemo. So I had suffered a lot of loss in a short period of time. And I was not in a good space. And I also was just looking for support and love. And I know that it was not that for me. But in my head, I still somehow convinced myself it was, which is, I think, why I held on so long. After I'd started there, I did the summer program and I joined their company. I was the youngest in the company. Humbly, I have a very natural ability. I always have since I was a little girl, so I excelled very quickly. So I was the youngest in the company. I was also versatile, so I was technically trained, and they used me to their advantage, which I was fine with until it became a bad environment. And it started with just the girls in my company and their moms, and it was like, okay, I can handle this, it's fine, But as I kept growing and accelerating throughout the studio, it wasn't just the jealousy of these girls that were my age. It then became the older, not even just girls, the girls, guys, everyone. And their parents, my studio owner even eventually started doing it, and his girlfriend. And I don't want to feed too much into them because they don't deserve that energy. But it had progressively gotten so bad throughout the years. By the time I was 13 was when I made the decision, like, okay, I'm leaving this year, but I'd already committed. I was the center of all the competition dances. I was like, I'm going to finish my commitment just because that's the type of person that I am. And still through all of this, I feel like I have to express that my mom did not know. A lot of the times they're always like, why didn't your mom pull you? Why didn't this or that? I didn't tell her. She would have, I promise. She's a great mother. Just side note. But yeah, so once they it was really clear that I had checked out, because even while they were treating me terribly, I still tried so hard to be their friend or be nice to them or convince them to like me or love me, because I knew I was like, I'm such a nice person. Like, why don't you like me? There was no reason. Mm-hmm. And I still, so once I had decided, I can't take this anymore, and I checked out and I stopped trying to get on their good side, it was almost like they got 10 times worse. And as the season went on, it really just kept progressing, and I did not think I would mentally be able to make it to the end of the season. But I had July of 2015, I had just turned 14, and we were preparing for our national competition. It's important to mention in here that our studio was not actually a dance studio, and we didn't know. We didn't know that it was actually an old condemned warehouse, and they had just put bubbled up vinyl on the floor and called it a day. And they never let our parents in the studio, so they didn't know any different. But so while we're in this warehouse, it's the middle of summer, we're in a heat wave. It's also pouring rain. There's water leaking from the ceilings, no AC, no heat in the winter. It was, the mirrors were fogged up, there was sweat everywhere, and the flooring was terrible. So like I said, I was the center of all the dances, and we were there for like 6 hours this day. We just kept running the routines and running them. And then there's this one particular routine that I was the center of, and I was doing a double pirouette into a straddle. We kept doing it over and over again, and she just kept telling me, you know, how awful I was doing and how terrible I was, and kept making me do it more and more. And I got to the point where I was exhausted, and I just was like, I need to sit for a few minutes. Also, I wasn't allowed to have my water in the room or my bag or my phone. Everyone else was. I wasn't. So at this point, I was like completely dehydrated and just exhausted. And I was like, can I please just take a break for a few minutes? And she was like, no, do it one more time. And even one of my like, you know, friends at the time was like, she's done it like 15 times. Like, let her sit for a minute. We can do it before we leave. And she just insisted. So I do it. I slip on sweat in the vinyl, and I landed on my forehead. I blacked out. I was unconscious. I don't know how long I was unconscious for. I do remember coming to, and you know, there's like that initial adrenaline where I was like, what's happening? And then once it all settled in, it was one of the worst feelings I've ever experienced in my life. And I had the worst throbbing pain in my head. I was throwing up. I was dizzy. I couldn't see straight. I was crying. And, you know, this happened over an hour before our rehearsal was over. They didn't call for help. They didn't render aid. They didn't call my parents. They didn't call anyone. They left me in the corner of the studio crying and throwing up, sick, at just turned 14 years old for over an hour in this condition. And the same friend at the time had practically had to carry me out to my mother's car and tell her, you need to take her to the hospital. She hit her head. And my mom's like, what? What are you talking about? He was like, she hit her head. She's not doing well. She needs to go to the hospital. And my mom's thinking, okay, if this is something severe, they would have called me, right? And I'm not talking. Like, I could not. And we had to pull over like 5 times to throw up just on the way to the hospital. And I didn't speak until I got there. And I remember there was a waiting room full of people. It was like a 3-4 hour wait. And I started telling them what had happened, and they like immediately rushed me back. And I was going into tests. I had like 3 doctors in there. It was terrifying. Like, I really don't acknowledge enough the feelings that I felt during that period of time, because I kind of block it out. They thought that I had internal bleeding because of the severity of the fall. Thankfully, I didn't. But because I was so dehydrated, there was no cushioning on my brain. So not only did I hit my head once, but I technically hit it 3 times, because it hit the front, the back, and then the front of my head again. They told me that I would never dance again. I would be lucky if I even walked, and that I should just be grateful that I survived. This happened a week before nationals, like I'd said, and I was the center of all the dances. But my siblings were also competing at nationals. And even though I clearly couldn't dance, I still wanted to go and support and be there and be a part of a team that didn't care about me, but I cared about for some reason. And I remember when I got there and everyone was being like very like nasty and cold towards me, and I didn't understand what was happening. And then come to find out, my studio owner had told them all that I wasn't hurt. I was faking it, and I was doing it to sabotage them at nationals. And that ended up turning into him inciting my team to basically jump me in the middle of this hotel lobby in Atlantic City. And that same friend had jumped in the way to defend me. And my like, her name's Jasmine. She's still one of my best friends to this day. She's always looked out for me. And I just remember her snatching me by the arm and pulling me into, like, this hallway closet. These people were so crazy. Not only was it the students, but it was the parents and the studio owner as well. They choked this kid unconscious, almost unconscious. And when the police showed up, they sent them away and said that it was just, you know, their family, out of control family member. It's fine. And I don't want to give them the energy, but it is a very important background of what I've been through. And after that is really when I started my, you know, recovery process. I went through cognitive therapy, physical therapy, vision therapy, speech therapy. There was this one, like, they hooked me up this machine with, like, lights.
EDMR?
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah.
It was so long ago.
Yeah,
and
it's the light therapy.
I feel I went through, like, every form of therapy you could probably think of. And I made minimal progress. And after about a year, they looked at my mom and they were like, well, this is as good as she's going to get. Like, we taught her a bunch of coping skills, like, good luck. And my mom was like, you're really going to look at me and tell me my 14, 15-year-old daughter, this is as good as she's going to get. She's ruined for the rest of her life. And they're like, well, don't know what you want me to say, really. And my mom wasn't having that. She was not taking that as an answer. And I was at a very low point in my life, granted. There's circumstances and a lot of other things that I have not publicly discussed yet that I went through at the same time. And she knew the only way to get through to me really was dance. And not being able to dance or losing the hope that I could dance was pretty much like it. You know, I didn't have anything to look forward to. And, you know, I fought her going back to dance. It was one of the hardest experiences of my life. I would cry and throw up before and after rehearsal because not only did I have the traumatic brain injury, but I had lasting effects. I still can't drive a car to this day. I couldn't go on roller coasters for years. I'm still technically not supposed to, but, you know, she's grown. It's fine. But, like, you know, I suffer with migraines and vertigo and dizziness. I still have issues with my balance. Like, I can hold myself standing, but if I close my eyes, I'm going to fall. And not because of me, but because of the damage it did to my brain. And so it took me about a year of fighting through getting dancing and really working through all of that. And took me about a year to get back to what I would say was my new normal. And then I started assisting this small dance convention called Wind Up Dance Tour. And they were like, I really want to do an event in LA. I had never been to LA. I also knew nothing about the industry at this time. And I was like, oh, that sounds so fun, so exciting. And so I flew out here to assist, and I was just in class having a great time. And this lady walks up to me, and she was like, oh, hi, like, I'm Jennifer from Block. Like, I've been watching you, and I would love to represent you. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And then I went back to class because I didn't know what that meant. And I was 15. And then she had to go get my mom and be like, I don't think Olivia really understood what was happening, but, you know, and that's basically what kind of threw me into the journey. But, you know, it took a lot to get here. And I think one of the hardest pills to swallow throughout the journey and all the doctors and the exams and everything was, we had thought for the longest time the issue was my eyes, right? And why I had these, like, if I'm in like a big space like a Walmart or Home Depot with like big fluorescent lighting, my brain can't process it and I get really sick. I start to pass out. And they said that there was an issue with my peripheral vision, but every time I went to the eye doctor, my eyes aren't great, but there was nothing that would make that happen. And it wasn't until I had to go through an IME we were going through it with the medical stuff. And I went to this one doctor, and he had this, like, special type of testing or whatever where he could hook up to like your eyes and your brain at the same time. And he was actually able to see that the damage wasn't to my eyes. It was actually to a part of my frontal lobe that controls my connection of my peripheral and central vision. And so there's damage to that part of my brain. And where it's something that I have worked through and, you know, recovered from for the most part, it is also something that is still going to affect me for the rest of my life.
I can't imagine how hard that must have been, and everything you've gone through, and seeing how strong you are today and how positive you are today is such an inspiration, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. So if going back, if you could say something to your 11 and 12-year-old self that was going through all of this, do you know kind of what you would say to her?
It's all going to be worth it. Everything's going to be okay. And although I've been through a lot of terrible and traumatic things in my life, every little experience, and I mean little, I've been able to watch it all build and unfold and play out like, wow, okay, this was all really meant to happen. And, you know, everyone says everything happens for a reason. But, like, until you sit down and, like, analyze that, like, well, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't have been able to do this or this and that. Every single thing has built me and created me into the person that I am today. And I would not trade her for the world. So as much as it, you know, hurt me and broke me, it has made me into the person that my 11 and 12-year-old self would idolize. Like, I had this realization a few months ago. I was thinking, and I was like, younger me, like, I would be my idol. Like, I would have thought I was a badass. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was like, wow. Like, everything I always dreamed of being, I'm going to make myself, you know? And, you know, I guess if you want to be more emotional side of it, I would just give her a really big hug and tell her how much I love her and how special she is, and she's going to make a difference in this world.
So now, you know, transitioning on to kind of advice, since you've built up this whole, you know, platform where you're able to give advice to other people that are in bullying situations, what would you say to your bullies if you were able to talk to them now?
I think there's a little petty part of me that would want to say, you tried it, but look at me now. You know, there's always going to be that part
so
that
understandable.
You tried to stop me and you never will. But then there's the more real part of me that even though those people did what they did, there was a point in my life where I really did care about them and love them, you know? And I have such a big heart, and it's a blessing and a curse. But I truly have prayed for them that they heal and get the help that they need and become better people. And I do wish that for them. And, you know, I guess I would tell them I forgive them, but not because they were sorry, not because they ever apologized or tried to make things right. I forgave them for myself. And, you know, forgiveness is a hard thing, and they necessarily really probably don't deserve it. But by not forgiving them, I was holding on to that pain and that anger and resentment. And by holding on, they were still able to damage me without even being a part of my life. And once I grasped that is when I was able to start learning the art of letting go.
I just want to touch base a little more on what you say about forgiveness, because I think that's so powerful and that it's such a hard pill to swallow, but hating someone and resenting somebody, the only person it's hurting is yourself, and it's so hard to let go of that. And so what kind of advice or tips would you give to somebody who, for forgiving but not necessarily forgetting?
If someone apologizes and they follow that up with the actions and the words that are actually changing that behavior, then that is obviously something you can easily forgive. But apologizing with no behavior, no changed behavior, it's not an apology, really. And then there's the people who are never going to apologize because either they're too prideful to admit that they were wrong in what they did to you, or they don't think that they did anything wrong because they've truly convinced themselves that they were in the right. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people, delusional people in this world, who justify their own horrific actions. And I think forgiveness now is such a natural and easy thing for me. But at that point, it wasn't, and I really what it came to was me loving myself enough to let go. Because, yes, forgive. We never forget. We will never forget. And as much as we won't forget, it always comes back around, whether that you put out good energy, you get good energy back. You put out bad energy, you get bad energy back. Life is a reflection of what you are giving it. And if you're holding on to these people and this resentment and the anger and the pain that they put you through, like I said, not only are they winning because they're getting exactly what they want by getting in your head and holding you down, but you're also hurting yourself from being able to be open and being able to love and trust again and make friends and go out. And that's a really big thing. I've had such a hard experience, especially now going in adulthood, like trying to really make genuine friendships, because even now with all the work that I've done, there is still part of me that is very closed off to trusting people. And I'm still working on it, I'm working through it, but the start to all of that is letting go. And once you forgive and you learn to detach, and not just from these people, learn to detach from anything that is not serving you or bringing you into your highest vibration and your highest light, that's not pushing you to be great. Once you learn how to detach, you will literally watch your life change. And I'm not even being dramatic when I say I have literally made and watched my life change so drastically in the last 6-7 months that if I was having a conversation with myself in September, I don't even think September me would be able to grasp what was happening, and the biggest freedom is just letting go and trusting God, the universe, whatever you believe in, that they're going to get you to where you're meant to be. And as long as you know that you're operating from your morals and your character and the values that you hold close to your heart, and you are being the person that you want to present the world you want to be, is when it all starts to fall into place for you. You have to put yourself there for the rest of it to catch up.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. I know that this is going to be such a powerful podcast, and, hopefully it's going to really affect people and change people's perspective. So if, to wrap things up, what's one last thing that you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've loved being here. This was a great experience. One thing that I would leave the viewers with is to just always be yourself. Don't be afraid of your own light. Don't be afraid of shining and being who you are, whoever that is, and just loving and accepting yourself as you are, and the right people will find you.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors and partners, Michael J. LeBeau, NormanAid Peer Counselors, KBEV, and of course, we'd like to thank our listeners. Stay safe and make today well lived.